She said she thought everybody wanted to raise.
She didn't say that a couple of years ago when she came protesting a 4% increase. And then we asked her if she did the homestead exemption. And she didn't know that. So
When she said everybody, she just meant the 5 of you. She didn't mean the whole school district. That would go over well.
yeah.
She was talking about the board.
Well, the last time it was done, it was so inconvenient.
My daughter just moved out there, and her library in Danville.
Is it just a maximum set by the state? Is that what it is? Or I never know how it came about.
It's $75 per meeting. And it used to be up to a maximum of 2,000, but now it's up to a maximum of 3,000. It was
Give people a chance to change clothes and come back.
Is that a state? The state
the state is a maximum.
For our district,
We had not paid 2,000.
I never did know how that was
Miss Richard just said her purse as her Steve.
No, she was
He
not.
was present with the purse earlier.
There she is.
What'd you do with him? What'd you do with him? Come here. She said, no, the ship sailor. Come here. A long chair.
Dr. Kudak, you have blood pressure.
What's that?
A blood pressure cup. You're a doctor. I'm supposed to be monitoring my blood pressure, and I forgot the blood pressure bag.
Now, what are you doing at a school board meeting?
I was missed.
Trying to get it up.
Watching it go up.
Yeah, that's right.
Ashley, you need my heart rate sensor? I'll let you can
My
borrow
heart's
it.
fine. Blood pressure.
I think they're related, but I didn't go to medical school.
Well, my heart rate's been fine the whole time.
When you
All right, get started here.
Yeah.
All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the May 21st tentative budget meeting. This is a special meeting. We'll start out with, we'll rise and have a moment of silence. Unfortunately, during the moment of silence, we need to think about the folks down in Santa Fe, Texas, because of the shooting that they went through last week. And now we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda.
A couple questions.
Yes, sir.
One, I'm just wondering if maybe 4 and 3 should be reversed if we're thinking about raising part of the budget. Wouldn't we want to discuss that before we did the budget? Or
I thought the same thing.
I think that's an excellent question. And I might, if you don't mind, got to defer that question to the finance officer as from your perspective on that.
That is a board decision. Right now, the budget has to be turned into KDE on the 30th. So any decisions made on salary tables are not, we're not gonna have time to make those changes, bring the budget back, approve that budget. So essentially, the budget's gonna be approved as it is tonight. And if you make any changes, it needs to be with the directive. If you feel there's enough money in the budget, we will make those changes and submit. There's not enough time in the cycle to bring it back for us to be approved.
So is that something that we would need to, do we have the latitude within the contingency funds to do that in that order? What do y'all think?
that's a good explanation. I'm fine with that. The only other thing that I have is that Item 4 just talks about discussion and approval of changes to certified rank 1, 2, and 3. Says nothing about classified. I'm just wondering, based on what Ms. Ellis said, if we can address any other schedules or only the budget can either go or don't go as it is. I'm not sure.
You can address
Mr.
the others,
Elkins?
and it would go the same as,
Well, I think you have to stick to your
Well, you have to
items
stick to
on
the
your
agenda.
So I guess even broadly interpreted, that wouldn't include classified employees at this point.
So even within the confines of what's in the budget, you could not, like on the approval of the tentative budget, we couldn't make changes that we're either passing that or not passing that.
Well, I think you're here to develop a tentative budget for submission. So whatever tentative budget you approve here by majority to be submitted could include, I think, any line item that you can get a majority vote for here. And perhaps that will be something with respect to employees. But speaking to that item alone, that item is narrower than that.
Okay. I'm still not sure whether I'm clear on that or not. You're talking like a lawyer, and it's killing me.
Okay, so the item itself doesn't speak to that, but certainly anything within the budget, is.
I mean, if we made a change to salary schedules, that would be
part of the tentative budget.
our tentative budget. The budget would be submitted with those changes, saying it would be with those changes, correct?
Yes.
Is that,
If I'm understanding correctly, as we're talking about the budget, you can still, in that discussion, talk about any kind of changes you want to make for line items when we're developing and improving the budget. So at that time, if you want to address salary tables at any other time other than line item 4.
that's what I'm saying, when we
that's the
get, if we
time.
move to line 4, then that can only be certified salary, correct?
So I would say
So,
line 3
okay.
is when you need to discuss any other
Okay.
items that are not.
All right, thank you, that's clear, thank you.
To change the budget.
So wouldn't number 4 still need to be discussed prior to item 3?
I think item 5 is actually kind of tied in there together. Again, I'll have to defer to the attorney on, our attorney on this. I think the order of these items, I think we have the flexibility to move these around and let my Robert's rule to up there in the car, but I think we probably also have the flexibility, if we're on something, we could probably take a pause on it and tackle something else and then come back to it. Is that permitted?
Well, I think you can, amend this agenda as long as you stick to the items that are on it, put them in whatever order you please, if you can get the consensus here to do that, and then take them up during the time.
Because the way, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No worries.
The way it would look to me that if we passed a budget, then we went to number 4, we changed things in number 4, wouldn't we have to go back and pass another tentative budget?
Yes, you would.
So I think 4 should be before 3. That would be my recommendation of the adoption of the agenda.
How about if we put 4 and 5 in front of 3? And then if we went down the path of 5 and thought, well, we're good with the concept, let's go ahead and discuss this in more detail later on in meetings, could we then come back to 5 and essentially table it during the meeting and then come back to it at a later point in the meeting?
The short answer, I think, is yes. But it doesn't seem to be that it's going to be a line item on your budget anyway.
Right.
So,
Well, it's more of a concept, but they're related in there.
But it wouldn't affect the
I
budget
think as
whether we.
chairperson, you can deal with that as you think appropriate as it comes up on the agenda once you've adopted it.
My motion would be adopt agenda with item 4 becoming item 3 and item 3 becoming number 4 would be my motion.
Okay. We have a motion by Mr. Peridot that on the agenda as printed, that item number 3 be repositioned as item number 4 in order, and the current item 4 be repositioned as item number 3. Is there a second on that motion?
I'll second it.
Second by Ms. Ritchie. Is there any discussion about that? Any further discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So that change passes 5-0. So that change in order has occurred. Now that we have the amended agenda, it seems like it would be now in order to adopt that, unless there's any further changes.
I thought that's what we did.
Yeah, I thought we
I thought we
My
adopted.
motion was to adopt the agenda with 3
Okay.
replacing.
Well, that's even more efficient.
Okay.
Did you get that?
I had as amended.
Well, I was just wrong then. Appreciate y'all clarifying all that. All righty, that is all out of the way then. Now we move to the public comment section. We have several folks that are here, and they've noted on here the items the way they were listed in the agenda. So we'll just certainly deal with it as and renumber it at that particular time. The first person is Brian Foudray. And this is agenda items 4 and 5, so that would now be 3 and 5.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Foudray. I've been a teacher at GRC for 7 years. Recently became the president of the Clark County Education Association. I'm joined here tonight by 2 other members from the association and several teachers. We're in agreement. Clark County's current classified employees deserve a raise for their hard work. Additionally, at the very least, certified employee pay scales should be adjusted so that we are above the pay scales of every other county in the region other than Fayette, at each level of experience and at each rank, 1, 2, and 3. Also, we believe the district should increase our competitiveness relative to Fayette's salary schedule by pursuing a 1% across-the-board raise. Why should the raises move forward? We have 3 reasons. First, we've earned it. According to the document put out by the district entitled Why Choose Clark County Schools, the Department of Education school report card listed Clark County's district accountability scores as being above all other districts in the area. We received the label of school distinction on multiple occasions. GRC is the number 2 ranked high school in the eastern half of the state and is ranked 19th in the state according to U.S. News and World Report. We have the highest graduation rate of the surrounding 8 counties. We have the most instructional hours of any non-independent school district in the state, and 79% of teaching staff have a master's degree. Second, teacher retention is a problem. I know of multiple teachers who live in Lexington, work their first 4 to 10 years in Clark County, receive thousands of dollars of the district's money for PD and training, build relationships in the community, and then leave it all behind because the pay is so much better in Fayette. A quick check at the salary schedule shows that a rank 2 teacher with 25 years experience makes $19,000 more in Fayette than a Clark County teacher with the exact same rank and experience. There are many people who have left for Fayette County, great teachers. They are not outliers. That seems to be a pattern to me. Third, the district can pay for the raises. According to the info that was released in the last board meeting, a raise in salary of 1% for certified employees and 2% for classified would require approximately $252,000 in additional funds. I've also been informed that Clark's contingency fund is the 4th best in the state, and that we have approximately $13 to $15 million in the fund. If this information is accurate, then we already have the funds available to account for at least a majority of the money required to offer a raise. We would still have significant money in the rainy day fund. Furthermore, some, if not all, of the money required to pay for raises could be found in the existing budget through restructuring. For example, let's use the money saved for employees who are retiring this year and whose position does not need to be filled for the next school year to help pay for the rates. Additionally, in many districts, my dad was on a school board when I was in high school, and talking with him, he said there's many districts that often have some money budgeted for positions that go unfilled from year after year. Instead of adding those unused funds to the rainy day fund, we could use it to contribute to the raises for existing employees. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Next, we have Sherry Reed, Sharon Theory. I hope I didn't butcher that too badly.
Sorry. That's okay.
And this is on the agenda item number 5, which is consider discussion approval to contract to pay comparison study.
We've got a couple handouts for you. My name is Sherry Thyree, and I work at Campbell Junior High. I've been with the district for 22 years,
and I'm the secretary / bookkeeper. On our salary schedule, you all call us secretaries, but probably 90 to 95% of our job is bookkeepers. I'm here tonight for you to look at these salary schedules from the surrounding counties. I've compared, I think, 6 different counties on this schedule. When you look at it, you can see Clark County has the lowest pay on these 4 positions. The positions are bookkeeper, secretary, instructional assistant, and attendance clerk. On this schedule, in just about every position, our hourly rate is $2 to $3 or more less than the other counties.
Is this hourly rates, the big
Yes,
print? I can't read your small print.
Yes. The other one is tax, is the surrounding counties' tax rates. At the last board meeting, it was a slap in our face when you approved a raise for just the cafeteria workers and the supervisor. And before that, it was only the bus drivers. At the last board meeting, you said to fund a raise, you would need to raise taxes, but when comparing the other districts' taxes, they are all less than ours, and they are still paying their employees more per hour. And with that said, we have the 4th largest contingency in the state behind Jefferson, Oldham, and Fayette. And then there's Little Clark County with the 4th largest. Why can't we use some of this contingency money to help get a raise for the classified and certified employees?
And I guess my question, my name is Sherry Reed, and I've been with school system for about 5 years now. And I guess my biggest question is, I know that in the last board meeting you were talking about you did not want to raise property tax. Well, our property tax right now is at 62.2%. And if you give the 1% and 2% raise, it will increase, it'll be $252,000. And if you do a 0.6% raise, you just have to come up with the $97,000. However, our tax rate is higher than a lot of surrounding counties, and they pay more with a lower tax rate. So really, my question is, why do you think the tax rate would need to be raised when we have the money that we have in there in the budget, the contingency budget? And could it be a possibility that through restructuring the finances from positions that are ending, to take that money and use it towards salary increases? And if we want to have successful schools, then this all goes hand in hand. Your teachers and staff are the guardians of the schools. We work really hard. We make sure they're safe. It's a big responsibility. And without support from you guys, then I'm afraid that we're going to lose a lot of qualified teachers and a lot of qualified staff. We don't want just anybody. You can go to Lowe's and start out making $10 an hour. And our main reason for being in this business is our children and their education. So please, take into consideration what it's going to take to keep qualified teachers and staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. The next person to sign is Eloise. Is it?
It's Lynch. I
Lynch?
have terrible handwriting, I'm sorry.
And this is on the original items 4 and 5.
I'm an English teacher at George Rogers Clark High School, despite my poor handwriting. Men and women of the Clark County Board of Education, in the wee hours of this morning, I flew in from Washington, D.C., after spending the weekend working strenuously with educators from across the United States on a College Board instructional review panel. Despite sleep deprivation, intellectual exhaustion, and travel fatigue, I've managed to summon my regular level of energy for my seniors today, and spent the rest of it on the handful of students brave enough to show up for the spoken word poetry club I hold after school on Mondays. I believe in the message my colleagues bring to you tonight, and so, fearing my exhaustion may muddy my coherency, I add my voice via a prepared letter. First, I'd like to thank you. Clark County Public Schools gave me my start in education, hiring me fresh out of graduate school. Looking back over these past 5 years, I recognize my many blessings. All 5 years, I've taught in a brand new school with fabulous facilities and resources. I have worked under an administration that has trusted my expertise and granted the freedom to largely design my own curriculum, as well as to explore such co-curricular programs as Poetry Out Loud. They've also fostered my professional growth, accommodating my continued studies at Middlebury College and facilitating trainings in advanced placement, language and literature, and college-level composition and rhetoric. My colleagues are friendly and hardworking. The community is supportive. My students bring meaning to my life. I am truly grateful. Please understand, then, that I come to you not with complaints or petulant demands. Nor do my colleagues. We are happy here. We would like to remain here. And as such, we come to you with a plea. Enable us to stay. Many members of the George Rogers Clark High School family have left to take positions in higher-paying counties, and many more of us have received such offers. Although we educators are pulled powerfully by a sense of obligation to the local community and to our students, we also feel the tug of individual career ambitions and personal responsibilities to our families and children, perhaps particularly those of us who commute from Lexington. I am recently separated from my husband. I have one income with which to meet my daughter's needs. And sharing custody means the lost time I have with her due to commuting stings all the more. Certainly, you are not responsible for addressing my life's complexities. I ask, though, that you recognize that many of your teachers lead complex, challenging lives that require difficult decisions. If it is within your means, please grant the pay increase my colleagues have proposed and ease the difficulty of our decision-making. This year has served as something of a referendum on society's valuing of teachers. In fact, one of my dual credit English 200 students chose to write her final essay about teachers' pay. She writes that inadequate compensation for our teachers devalues teachers as professionals, and this devaluing is catastrophic to our society, as our students' success is impacted by the quality of their education, end quote. In her essay, she cites an international study that found a correlation between teacher pay and student success. For each 10% in pay increase, the study found a corresponding increase in student academic performance. This data trend is not surprising. The higher the pay, the better the candidates you attract. The higher the pay, the more likely the most talented candidates are to stick around, which allows for consistent instruction buttressed by compounding experience. I suppose I really needn't touch on this logic. It's obvious to everyone and anyone. Less simple, I imagine, is finding the funds that this simple logic demands. Allow me to say, then, that I recognize the challenges you face on a daily basis as well, and often on our behalf. I recognize that your decisions are also difficult. I wish you luck in reaching a decision that will best safeguard Clark County's dearest asset and investment, its rising generations, and I thank you for hearing us.
Okay. Next we have Brent Sizemore. On agenda items 4 and 5.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Brent Sizemore. I've been a social studies teacher at George Rogers Clark High School for now 10 years. I actually was started, Mr. Perdo gave me that original start many years ago. I've come in to become one of the more veteran teachers at the school, not just because I've been there very long, but also because we've lost a rather large amount of teachers. Staff retention and staff turnover has always been an issue really over the last several years. And while some of that is due to maybe the personalities of some teachers, others look at this as an opportunity to move into another school district, whether it be proximity or just higher pay in Fayette County. We've lost several qualified teachers, veteran teachers, those that can help develop school culture, those that can lead, those that can help mentor younger teachers. If not, then we have a large amount of young teachers who don't really have that veteran voice, don't really have the type of model that they can really go after. Well, Madison and Fayette County traditionally have siphoned off teachers from Clark County. Many of the teachers here, they either commute from Fayette County or from Madison County. And just over the last 10 years, I've taken just a small little list of the teachers that we particularly lost to that. We've lost a social studies teacher to Fayette County. We have lost a counselor to Fayette County, a math teacher to Fayette County, a freshman football coach to Fayette County. We've lost a biology position to Fayette County, 2 special ed teachers to Fayette County, 2 more English teachers to Fayette County for specialist degrees, 1 principal to Fayette County, and finally 1 physics teacher to Madison County. Many of the teachers here, as been echoed before, we got our first start here. We formed relationships here. It's one of those things when you have an open house and parents come in and tell you that you've had all 4 of their children. These are the type of connections, these are the things that teachers do in order to say, this is why we chose this profession. Any sort of pay increase will obviously help to keep many of your most valued teachers here, because we stay here already regardless. I've stayed here 10 years because of the relationship that I've formed, and I wish to continue to be here as well. But as with life demands, if you want to have a house, you want to start a family, there are certain things that have to be taken into consideration. So any sort of pay increase could possibly help with that. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Teresa Burkhardt. Did I get that right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, great.
Good evening. First, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I want to thank you for your service and dedication to Clark County. I come tonight, as those before me, asking you to please seriously consider some factors that that we certainly need a salary increase for both our classified and certified employees. I've heard it said that you can't compete with Fayette County. Well, I believe that you have, and you've done a very good job at that. You've also competed with Jefferson and Oldham, and you have the 4th highest contingency in the state. So you competed quite well. We didn't ask for competition with Fayette County, but we have competition with Fayette County. And therefore we have to address that. I'm asking you to consider your investment that you've made. The investment that you've made in both classified and certified employees, your professional development hours and training and money, mentorship and the time that's been invested in us. And I'm asking you to continue that investment, because it seems that we have employees that you train very well and then they leave. So continue that investment by investing in us. I'm asking that you consider tonight, stop the bleed and vote for a salary increase for both our classified and our certified employees. And Mr. Heisel, Ms. Hicks, and Ms. Ritchie, I really implore you tonight to vote yes for a salary increase for both classified and certified employees, and invest in our community. And that also is an investment in our students of Clark County and our future. Thank you.
Ms. Nance, for the record, that was on topics 4 and 5. There was one more name that was crossed out, so that is everybody who signed up for to address the board. And on behalf of the board, we appreciate those comments, and certainly made notes as we went along, and we'll keep all those items in mind. All righty. The second item on the agenda is considered discussion and/or approval of proposed change order 19-2 for the George Rogers Clark High School Gymnasium and Athletics Field Project BG 16-238 in the amount of $20,700. Mr. Donald Stone.
Okay. Along with major construction projects, often poses an opportunity, indirect opportunity for further improvements to sites, and this is a perfect example of that statement. If I could get Carrie to pull that picture up on the overhead, if you don't mind. We've got an overhead pic from Steve Berry at the GIS Consortium of the area that we're considering, or asking the board to consider for change order. This is the right entrance road on the east side of the building. You'll notice the black line is the area that we're looking at this point. It's roughly 30 feet by 300 feet. Right now that's a ditch area. It breaks off of the road down into a ditch and then up on the mountainside. The area is located adjacent to the, as you can see, the greenhouse there, the ag department. Kind of got a sense of where that falls on the location of the site. What the school and the ag department and ROTC would like for the board to consider would be to contract with Rising Sun, who already has equipment on site, to install drain tile at that location, drain wall, and to fill that in with the earthwork from the other side of the building, in which we're clearing for our athletic fields. So the price of $20,700 to do all the drain tile for that project, to fill it in with the dirt that we have on the other side of the building, and to reclaim that area to create about approximately a 30 by 300 foot strip of green space that's very usable, potentially very usable to several programs at the school is what the school is asking you to consider. We're also asking you to consider paying for that particular project out of your GRC or your gymnasium athletic field contingency fund. I've also included in your packet what that would result in, and if you were to take the $20,700 from that particular fund, in fact, it would still leave you with $1,094,804.80 if you were to purchase or to invest in that particular project. Level green space at the site is not abundant. We have a lot of property at GRC location, but a lot of it's hills and ditches and valleys. This would be roughly a 9,000 square foot green space right off the side of the building that's really in an optimal area for students and staff to access. So we're asking for the board's consideration.
So what activities would go on in that?
Well, right now you have ROTC that's running down the roadway, and with our construction project, that's the only way to the back of the building that traffic has to go. So oftentimes, and I've experienced this a number of times, I've had to wait on students to get out of the road to get to the back side of the building over to the construction project. That would allow the students to run on that green space. It would also allow the ag department to utilize that space for possibly planting some vegetables or what have you, or to use it in some capacity for that part. And I'm sure down the line with that large of a space of green space that other activities and opportunities would pose themselves as well.
Yeah, I could see it being a good starting and ending point for a cross-country if you build a program.
That's a good point.
Any idea what a project like this would cost if we weren't not under construction right now?
I've been told at least fourfold, because we already have the dirt available.
Right.
The equipment's on site. If we were to contract for that particular job without the fill dirt available and without equipment on site, I was told it could be easily fourfold.
So this particular item comes within the scope of the athletic gymnasium facilities?
It would, because you're using the dirt and the equipment from that project. It would be an expansion of scope. It would be a contract with Rising Sun.
So it doesn't come within the current scope?
It would be an expansion of the current scope.
Okay.
Architects, construction managers are not involved in this, or are involved in it?
They would get their percentage off of that. And that's cited on page 1 of 3. The architect fee would increase by $1,117.80, and the construction manager fee by $393.30. So in answering your question, yes, they would be involved in that.
Can I elaborate a little bit more on
Any problem? Yes, sir, please.
Let's go back to the Sure. If you look back here, you can see the greenhouse in this area here. What we've done, and I'm not sure what you guys are aware of, here's the greenhouse in this area. We've grown through the ag and the greenhouse. We've produced about 2,500 heads of lettuce this year. It's our first attempt at it. That's all gone into food service, into the cafeteria. We're trying to expand that. She has the equipment right now to do I'm not sure if I'm going to say it's either aquaponics or hydroponics, we grow it in water. the kids are doing all this. We're going to expand into tomatoes, and I know Mr. Howard, we're trying to get strawberries in the greenhouse at Campbell, and I think the tomatoes, strawberries are the working with. But what we're trying to do here is copy some of the ideas from Concord, but the closer you get, the farther you get down, I guess, towards the backside of the building, the wider the area is. We're wanting to put planter boxes, and actually the kids are actually wanting to expand outdoors and grow. That's part of this idea, what really got this coming about, and also it would help ROTC out. But, you know, if you would come out and look at the greenhouse and see what the kids are doing, I mean, we're actually getting some real hands-on activities, and some pretty neat things are going on out there. Like I said, we have the equipment right now to expand into tomatoes. We're going to start growing tomatoes. That'll go into the cafeteria, and then hopefully we can get the greenhouse down there fired up and get some things corrected with it. We're going to start doing strawberries and stuff. So that's really what this is about, is to give us the area to do it. We're actually going to expand ag. We're actually going to employ another ag teacher. There'll be an ag teacher at Campbell next year. But we're also getting into landscaping. So that's something that's pretty neat. We're actually, I'll probably you'll see some of that stuff later, but on the hill, it's not just going to be the bare hillside.
So on this new or additional green space, I shouldn't envision that the JROTC folks are going to be running through the garden. There's going to be room, space for both. I'm not so visual here.
If you go down, I think if you look, there's like a light pole you can see on the farther end. That area down through there, probably the second half, the back half of that whole black line, that's probably closer, I'd say, to 50 feet wide.
Okay.
It's a lot deeper, but it's a lot wider. All that area through there will be probably is what we're looking to cultivate up to probably the end of the greenhouse.
Okay.
So yeah, you would see probably ROTC on the front end up through here, not on the back.
That's a pretty long expansion, 300 feet. That's a pretty good strip. Right now you have ditch in there. It's ditch.
Yeah.
Does this affect any of the stormwater calculations that were made?
It's going to be drain tiles, I was saying, it's going to take the same amount of water on. There will be drains built in above ground to take the water in, any surface water into the drain tiles. Not just an open end, on each end there's drains in the middle.
All right. Any further questions? Any motions on this issue?
I move that we approve the change order 19-2 for the George Rogers Clark High School Gymnasium and Athletic Fields Project as presented in the amount of $20,700.
Okay. Motion by Ms. Hicks.
Second.
Second by Ms. Ritchie. And just a point of clarification, the $20,700 then is an amendment or an addition to the contract with Rising Sun.
That's correct.
Okay. And then we then know, because of the existing contracts we have with the with Codell and the architects, their percentage will flow along.
That's
so,
correct.
but all needs to be approved at this part, and the other thing will follow along.
That's exactly correct. All will be paid for out of the contingency fund.
Do you want to specify that it's paid for from the contingency fund? From the
To be
project?
paid from the construction
Yes.
contingency for the GRC athletics and athletic fields and gymnasium project.
Could you accept an addition on that to pending KDE approval? So it doesn't look like we've approved it before KDE. It would be pending KDE approval.
Pending KDE approval. So that the final motion reads, I move that we approve the proposed change order 19-2 for the George Rogers Clark High School Gymnasium and Athletic Fields Project in the amount of $20,700 to come from the construction contingency for the high school gymnasium and athletic fields project, subject to approval by KDE.
Second again.
Excellent. All righty.
You gotta get it right, there's some English teachers out there. So.
Any further discussion on the motion that we have on the floor then? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes 5-0. All righty, now we're on to, let's see if I can get this right. The new item 3, which is consider discussion and approval of changes to the 2018-2019 certified rank 1, 2, and 3 salary schedules. This is an item that, unfortunately, it came together early Friday morning, and so it wasn't in the first draft, but it was in the second draft. And I described, even though we're not talking about 5 right now, my hopes that we could try to look and see how we compare to other folks and other districts. And included in your packet is potentially a wealth of information. I certainly understand and hear the discussion about Fayette County. We are, quite frankly, constrained in our long-term ability to make adjustments to stay with them because they have a payroll tax that generates, I believe, $37 million a year for them, which gives them the benefit of approximately a 20% boost in their budget because of that. And you know, our position is one of trying to strike a balance in there, and knowing that if we go through the avenue of purely payroll tax, property tax, that's affecting people that are working as well as retirees. And in my district, approximately a third of the folks that live in my district are retired. So we always have this balancing act of trying to see what we can accomplish. And quite frankly, I'm not really sure that it would preclude a discussion out in the community of should we have a payroll tax, because that certainly can help. But the way it sits right now, we don't have a payroll tax, and so the only way we can generate any significant funds is through the real estate tax. So to that end, you know, I wanted to take a look at the districts that surround Clark County, because we all are in the same general scenario of having to compete with Fayette County. So I included, it's a 22-page listing to go into the detail of each one of what made up the data, each one of the counties that touches Clark County, and then also added Jessamine County in there and Scott County. They don't touch Clark County, obviously, but they're in a very similar position that we are, that they're directly adjacent to Fayette County, and especially for Jessamine County, it's a fairly easy transition to get from Jessamine County up to Fayette County. It's almost seamless going up Nicholasville Road. So I included those in the calculation. Last week we had a discussion about the pros and cons of across the board pay raises. From a philosophical standpoint, I felt that an across the board raise was too blunt of an instrument to be able to modify our scales with. And so what I propose is to say, from a what-if standpoint, what would the cost be if we set a goal of having the highest pay of any of the surrounding districts to Clark County, including also Jessamine County and Scott County, for our rank 1, 2, and 3 employees. So let's see if we can get to the chart on there. That's it has green highlights. Perhaps that. Let's see. Yeah, that one right there. So on that chart, the items that are in green highlight is what the maximum pay rate is for those districts. So you'll see there that's rank 3, and years 0 and 1. Clark County is currently, Scott County has the maximum there, and then Clark County has the maximum years 2 and 3. You work your way down the chart, and so mathematically, what I wanted to try to take a swing at is knowing that all of these counties, and especially Scott County and Jessamine County were in a similar boat, having to compete with, like DeFay County. I mean, there's no reason to hide the issue. We're all in the same competitive situation. So what would it take mathematically to have us equal those rates where we're behind, and then just go $1 more to make sure that we're increasing all of that? So that's what all of these schedules are, and I have a model that is probably imperfect that I used to calculate what I thought the effect was. See if we can find that. It's a calculation page, so that's a different slip there, a different presentation.
Red at the top.
And no. I think that's it. So in this calculation, again, just focusing in on rank 1, 2, and 3. And I don't want to imply that means that certainly the folks that are on the classified staff would be ignored. But I wanted to try to focus in on this because there is a wealth of data that's out there. I've got another spreadsheet that compares all 173 districts as to where we rank right now. I think we're currently at about 40th out of 173. So there's great data out there in terms of comparing these certified schedules. Where it gets a little bit more difficult, and I appreciate the comparison you all did, I forget which speaker who turned that in, on looking at the classified side. Unfortunately, we have a lot of job descriptions, and that's really what item number 5 is to say what we ought to do, because I love data, is if we can have a study to look at the classified side, so we can match up positions, we can make adjustments for hours, et cetera, and then see how we compare and see what sort of roadmap we might need for the future to try to make sure we're fully competitive with this. But circling back to this, so my calculation on this is that it would cost approximately $252,000 to hit that goal of making adjustments for those 3 ranks. And Ms. Ellis, you probably have not had a chance, since it just came out on Friday, to run any sort of detailed analysis of that. But from a smell test basis, do you think that seems extremely off, or is it in the general
I
ballpark?
would say that's in the general ballpark.
Okay. So I just wanted to throw that out there as part of our discussions. It's a complicated subject, and we are constrained in what we're able to do. But we had a lot of talk last week about an overall increase, and I think the sentiment's good. We would need to make some adjustment, and so the question is, what's the most effective way to go about doing that? And so we can continue that discussion. I wanted to take the time to prepare this. I have it in your all's packet, so you could look at it throughout the weekend, and we could then have further discussion. If you could flip to the page that looks like this, which is our current schedule.
What's it titled on the document list?
I would assume that Clark County over 280. Are you looking at Clark County schedule, sir?
Yes, it is the one that's entitled
It would be 4F.
4F.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. So if you go to the, oh, no, I'm sorry, that's not it, Fiddlesticks. Let's see here.
Not 4F.
Not 4F.
Are you looking at the one that shows just the changes?
Yes, just the changes.
That's the first one. We'll go back to this. That should be 4A. If you're looking at the one that's just the changes first.
4A, perfect. Thank you very much. So now we'll zero in on the 3rd page of 4A. And this is, the first page of this is where we currently are. 2nd page is what it would take to equate to that.
Okay.
And then,
Yes, that 1 page.
Does that document have more than 1 page?
I'll say it's on one page.
there was I updated this morning to change it by $1. But this is entitled Certified Rank 1, 2, and 3 Salary Exceed Comparison District Proposal. It should be in the in the approximate range of 4A.
It should be 4A, I just replaced the one that you currently have up there.
Is it called something else? My 4A just has one page.
It's a one-page document.
Okay, I
It's a
thought you were
three-page
saying
doc.
page 3 of
There's 3
4A.
pages to it.
The one that's in this one is
Mine says updated 8:41 a.m.
This morning?
It doesn't have a date, so presumably that means today.
yes.
That's the document right there that we can print this out if need be, so people have it in front of them, or we can figure out some way to share it electronically.
So that-
You should have it.
I think the attachment only has one page. You're saying it should have 3. We don't know what the other 2 pages are.
That is the 3rd page.
Oh, we don't know what the first 2 pages are then.
Okay. The first page is our current schedule.
Okay,
It should look like this.
that's 4F then.
Yep.
So 4F is that, the current Clark County
Okay.
schedule is 4F.
Then more importantly is the one that has the proposed changes. And then the one we're just looking at is the difference. So that's the differences there.
So there should be one that has the actual full annual salary.
Yes, that is the proposed pay schedule.
That would be quite helpful to have.
Okay.
Because when I emailed you back and I said you sent me 3 off and said 4A, and I asked you, is that correct? And then you sent me back another document that said 4A and 4B. So those are the 2 I used.
Well,
It makes sense for the city.
I could have gotten confused in the process. Sorry.
Sir, so if you email that to me, I could help print it and make copies for everyone.
Okay. Would you all mind if we take about a 5-minute break to get this resolved then? And I apologize for the shortcoming on this end. Alrighty, so let's get this resolved, and again, my apologies for the confusion of the documents. It's 7:22, and hopefully we can maybe get back together close here, 7:30. 7:30 then. I've got it on here. Let me move it up. I've got about 4,000 documents on here. Let me move it up to my my root. All right.
That's
part of your raise here where it says calories and fats, so I get a raise those.
That stuff is uniformly bad.
Yes.
Ashley brought that in here just so we could move the meeting along.
Actually, Mr. Helton's problem is.
All right.
Oh, that's what, we thought those
Back.
were campaign.
All righty. It is now 7:30 p.m. on my
Boldness that exceeds
on
mine.
my phone and on my laptop, and we are back in session. I apologize for that mix-up in documents this morning. I made a $1 change about 11 o'clock last night and didn't have it all on the same page. So again, apologize for that. So if we could, let's go to the third page of that document right there. So the third page is essentially taking the difference between what we have right now and what it would take mathematically to have the highest rates among those 9 counties, and that's what the differences would be. So it's, you can see
That's a total cost of.
about $250,000. That's including the fringes.
And what's your goal here? What are we trying to do here?
What my goal is number one to bring up our the pay rates for these selected positions, and then number two to bring them up in a fashion so that we had parity plus a little bit between all the other districts. Conceptually, I think it would be nice to be able to know what the competition is at each rate and each step in terms of where people might be leaving and why we're not attracting folks, but that is difficult to really get that data. So absent of that, what I thought was, well, is if we can have, for these selected positions, if we can have the highest rate among all of these districts, that should put us in a fairly strong position. And when we're out there trying to communicate what our rates are, I mean, it's a fairly easy concept to say, absent Fayette County, which has their payroll tax of the region we're in, we flat out among all steps, all 3 ranks, what we're paying is the highest of any of those 9 counties.
And that's what this represents. We would need to add this much to each one of these things to get to the highest point. That's what you're
Yes,
saying?
sir. Yes, it is.
We're just looking at a numbers game here, right?
Yes.
Is what we're looking for. And you know, and I certainly appreciate the work with the numbers game, but you know, let's talk a people game as well. You know, I can look out in this crowd and see teachers, and there's teachers that come, great teachers that come from Montgomery County, they come from Fayette County, they come from Madison County, and being $1 ahead of them is not going to keep them with us. And we keep talking as if Fayette County does not exist, but Fayette County does exist. And every year that we can give a raise across the board that Fayette County does not, we become one step closer to narrowing that gap. And I guess when I get back to the people game, you know, the first gentleman that spoke, Mr. Foudre, is that right? Kind of reiterate the same things that Ms. Stone had for us the other night. And I will add, Ms. Stone was a principal in this district and left to go to Fayette County. And I hear the things, you know, Ms. Lynch, and I don't think she's still here, but what an honor to have somebody to do that for you. And I just think, you know, when we sit here, and in my belief, funds have been available in the past. Funds are available. Future funds could easily be available to raise us across the board. And that's what I think I would rather see. You know, I understand this, and I know it took a lot of work, and I understand where we want to go with this, but we have got to cut down that Fayette County. 19 teachers last year went to Fayette County. Mr. Sizemore gave about once, I kind of briefly counted on my hand 10, and I think he went a little bit further than that from the high school that it went there. And we have got to close that gap to keep the people. Many of our people are still living in Madison County. Many are still living in Fayette County. We got people in Montgomery County. You know, a novel ideal is if Fayette County is going to steal from us, why can't we steal the best from everybody else? And we're not going to do that on a dollar extra. That's just my thoughts on it.
Okay. I think you certainly raised a lot of good points. Because we have challenges on other areas besides this is $250,000, and this tells, how much money do we have in our budget right now? Like 140, 170,000. The very next item. Okay. So
That's budget-wise now. That's budget. Now, let's understand our conservative budget. You know, we've done a conservative budget, and even some of those times, we passed a deficit budget early in January, and then we made cuts to do it. I started this board 3 years ago with $11 million in the contingency, and we're projected to have over 15 at the end of this. Now, that's a conservative budget. That's more than $1 million each one of those years that could have supported a raise within there. And we have to look at those figures sometimes and just say, guys, you know, our budget is conservative. What have our people done for us? Well, we have saw the reports of what our people have done for us. So now we have to try to retain the people. And it's a competitive market. And it doesn't make any difference if you're living in Madison. Well, I can go to Clark County and make $1 more. That's really not going to appeal to anybody. We have got to try to set the bar and to get ahead. And I think we are in a position with funds that we can be able to do that.
I was hoping we could look at the budget first, but we got to this because I think there's a lot of very valid discussions we need to have in the nuts and bolts.
We've had 2 or 3 meetings about budget stuff. We have budgeted to death. Our meetings have been horrendously long. We've tried to go through and get these things in. We have got to start getting to the things that we make a difference in. And we make a difference in staff.
As of this morning, it was the first time the detailed budgeted numbers have been shared with any member of the board, so it's been really difficult to get into the nuts and bolts of it. From my perspective, I think it's been a multi-year process, and I think it's going to continue to be a multi-year process. And I see this as one of the waypoints in a gradual trend to increase the competitiveness that we have. This just addresses these 3. We've got an equal, if not a larger, burden. And to be able to take a look at the classified side and to make those changes. So let's just say that's also $250,000. So now we're at $500,000. We only have $140,000. The budget that's in front of us, the contingencies is now budgeted to be $10 million. It's no longer $15 million. Now we have a $10 million contingency on our budget because of phase 3 of the athletic project. And I just think we have to take it, one bite at a time. And I saw this as a really useful waypoint that we could get to. We might be, once we get into the fall, we know exactly what tax rates are. I know it's an awkward time to make changes, but that's an opportunity we could either revisit certified or classified or all the above, and then next spring. So,
I mean, why don't we listen to the people that are the experts in our district that have to live and die with this? Last year we ignored Alicia, we ignored Mr. Christie. This year we have done the same thing again. And guess who's on the very front line if this budget doesn't work out? And they're the same people that are saying we can do this. And when we say we can do this and then we go against it like we know so much more than everybody else, and then we end up at the end of the year and say, oh, we're going to put another $1.25 million in our contingency again this year. I mean, that's insane.
Why don't they present budgets that are realistic then?
Well, I think you're going to put a budget, but I think you have to understand the leeway that are in those budgets and what you can do. But there's many things in this budget that can be frozen or whatever if we got to a point to where we needed additional money. I mean, that's happened many, many times in school districts there. But what I'm saying, if you talk about the people and what your people have done for your school system, Why not live on that edge?
I'm very supportive of our people. That's why I brought this on, added this to the agenda, so we can make another good step along that path.
I understand what your proposal came in here to do, but you completely left classified out when you put this in here. And that's why I had to clarify some of the things that started before. And again, we're back to, okay, why did this person get a raise and this person didn't get a raise and this person? I mean, you know, the classified staff are very much involved in the culture of your school and should be addressed as far as that.
I agree 100%, but...
Do you have a motion for yours? I would like just to go on with this and then move on to the budget if we could.
I do have a motion, and further, since unless someone's calling for an into discussion, item number 5 talks about doing a pay comparison study so we can have some real data and have a good picture of exactly where we stand on classified. Then we could then address any changes that might be necessary, develop a game plan for that.
No, I don't feel comfortable making these changes for certified without addressing classified at the same time. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I have a question regarding the leftover that Mr. Peridot alluded to, where for each of the last X number of years, we have roughly $1 million each time that goes back into contingency. Is there any provision within the state guidelines related to school budgets that requires us to put it into contingency? Is any provision made that allows us to set aside whatever amount is left over to go just into salaries? Is there no provision for that?
Not to my knowledge.
Has to go into contingency?
No, I mean, there's not, to my knowledge, there's nothing that says it has to go into contingency. When you end the year, you're just ending the year with money left over, and then you build your new budget the next year based on your new source of reoccurring revenue, reoccurring expenses, and the differences in contingency. It's not that you're banking the money per se, it's just the way it falls out in the budget.
If not directed to go into salaries, it's going to go into contingency.
Right.
That's where it goes. It goes
And then
into
you get,
carryover.
when you're salary, then you just transfer it over.
And the reason that there is that carryover, in defense of that, we budget based on the staff that we have, that we know we have. We've got 31 that's retiring, and I guarantee you, the 31 that's retiring, we probably won't hire 2 that comes back with the amount of experience that any of those are leaving us with, which generates a large savings. That's still coming at the end of this year. I know that's going to happen. That's where that comes in each year.
Right.
And that's what gets us. There are salaries, and one of the speakers spoke to this. There are positions that early in the year, sometimes they get vacated. They don't get refilled for various reasons at the school level or whatever level. That money is going to end up part of the carryover. That's why we end up with money at the end of the year. It's not that we cut things off and we take money away from people or anything like that. The bulk of it comes in salaries. It goes unused salaries and savings. We lost 18 to Fayette County, all of them with 8-10 years. We probably hired back a lot of new teachers, probably $5,000 to $6,000 every teacher less.
And the same way with our revenue, you know, we've always had a great collection rate, but we still budget at a certain rate, and that's understandable because you never know when something like that may change, and I understand about that, but, you know, we have to know that when we make those budgets based on taxes, that we are doing it very conservatively, and the fact that we have the huge contingency allows us to live a little bit more on that edge, knowing that we can be protected by that contingency at that time. I mean, there's been times, you know, that we gave the one-time Christmas bonuses that cost somewhere in the $800,000 to $900,000 range when we come back, and we did that because we had so much money left over in the contingency. I'm just saying, let's just put that forward. Let's just start the year saying, we're going to take this stuff out of contingency if we don't do it. And that way you get to reward the good things that have happened in this district.
As I said, on the budget side, you know, we're going to bring that into the discussion right now. The real details was only made available this morning, and I think there's areas that, from my standpoint, have had significant cuts that I'm not sure are realistic to make this budget balanced. We can go over those details right now if you like, or we
Let's
can-
just get
we can tidy
through
up
this item here.
discussion.
And then we'll move to the
Ms.
budget.
Hicks, Ms. Ritchie, do you want to have any further on this agenda item? Okay.
No, not at this time. Well, I agree with Dr. Kudak. I mean, I don't know what happened to classified and how they didn't get brought into this at all. But, because the last meeting I was at, that was the one thing we were talking about we were going to concentrate on. And now we've totally just not even included them in nothing. And you're talking to the classified staff's daughter. So,
I do not want to ignore the classified staff, but from a data standpoint, it's a much more difficult challenge to try to compare those, the different jobs, because they're called different things among the different districts, and then you have different, like even bus drivers themselves, some districts are 4 hours, some are 5, some are 6. So it's going to take a while to be able to come up with a date on that, so we know exactly where we are. And that's the reason I had that item on the agenda tonight, so we can perform the study, have the data, and then move forward on that in a logical manner.
but in reality, so we tell these people to wait. You're just going to wait until we figure this out. I'm just curious, when you walk into Kroger's, do you see teachers that we have in our district and they're working?
Yes, I did.
When you go into Walmart, do you see some? That's not right. Our teachers are having to go out and get second jobs. Our aides are getting second and third jobs, especially if they're a single parent or whatever, just trying to take care of their child.
You know, in terms of the teachers, there was a comment made about, well, that's just a $1 difference. For example, our starting pay on rank 3 would go up $1,470 under my proposal. Year 2 would go up $802. Year 16 would go up $1,000. Year 25, pay rates would go up $1,900. I think these are significant increases in what we're paying right now. It will take us another step closer to where hopefully we'd like to be in the long run.
Yeah, but your classified's still hanging out at $10 an hour.
I'm absolutely not precluding that we would make any changes to that, but I think we need to perform the study, know exactly where we are, know where we are out of balance, because it would only be my magic if we had 100 different positions and all of them happen to all exactly be 2% or 1% off. There's no way. We need to look at each one and see where are we off, because we might be 1% low on another, we might be 5% low on another one, and we need to make sure that we do it on an item by item basis, so we can take care of each of the inequities that are out there based on what our competitive districts are paying.
So you're saying you would go in, give this person a 1%, give this person a 5% because they need to come closer, and then you're going to walk in that school and look at that one that you gave the 1% to versus the one you gave the 5% to?
You know, realistically, from my standpoint,
Realistically, we've gave raises before, up until this point. You know, for the first 4 years I was on here, I fought for the Christmas bonus. Was told that we need to get away from that because we need to start doing just a raise a year. That was what was given to me. I fought and fought and fought to get that because they needed that money at Christmas time because of all, they needed it. That was taken away. I don't know if we've done a raise since we took it away, maybe one. But the whole time that we told them we were taking that away, we told them we were going to give them a raise.
I've got a raise in front of the board right now.
For certified.
Step
But
one.
classified has to wait.
Step 1. If you want to, we've got a lot of time between now and June 30. If you want to propose another one, it's just the middle of May. Okay. Any further discussion on this item? All right, if there's no further discussion, then I would like to make a motion that we make an adjustment to the salary schedules for rank 1, 2, and 3 as reflected in the document that's on the display there. It's called Certified Rank 1, 2, 3 Salary Exceed Comparison Districts Proposal 05-2018 .pdf. And in the bottom right-hand corner, it's noted as proposed 5/2018. And those pay rate changes would go into effect at the beginning of the next fiscal year with an approximate cost of $250,000. There a second to that motion? Okay, there's no second, so that motion fails. So now we move on to the next item on our agenda, which is consider adoption of 2018-2019 tentative budget. Alicia Ellis.
So there should be a PowerPoint presentation for tentative budget. As you all know, the tentative budget is the second step in the budgeting process. It has to be approved by the board and submitted to KDE by May 30th. This is a deadline by the state that we have to meet or we will be out of compliance. This is the budget that we will also roll into and start July 1 with before, and modifications can still continue to be made and up until September 30th when we will approve the working budget and submit that to the state. It should be number 3A.
Yeah, it's in PDF.
Oh,
No, maybe it's
three.
It's in the threes. Yes, there we go. So revenue, how this budget was built, we've discussed most of these items, so I'm going to run through them really fast. Revenues were built on keeping our current tax rate of the 62.2, motor vehicle 53.5. We get a 3% utility tax. We know that our SEEK, we have our forecasted SEEK estimation based on the 4,734 students. We put 4,000 per pupil towards the Section 6 allocation funds. Typically, the board allocates 90%, so that's what's been done in this budget.
When will we know, Ms. Ellis, when will we know the AADA? When does that come in?
Second month is when it's the official, so the second month growth factor report, which is not till the second month of school, is the official
Okay.
ADA.
So this 4734.2, is that the 2-month estimate?
That is the rolling average of the 2 months that we do in the allocation. So when you saw the staffing allocation, it's the number that that OVEC has worked with us. You know, we do a rolling average of that second month, and that's where that number came from.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Since we were talking about staffing allocation. At one point, we discussed our attendance clerks. Mr. Boland, was it you that brought it up?
I was here that night. Something about the days?
Yes. Did anything ever happen with that?
I was never given a board directive to make any kind of change, so no, nothing's.
Is that
occurred.
something that can be looked into for tonight? Or is that something that has to be put back on the agenda? Or, I mean, is that an answer you need tonight?
If it was put in as part of the budget change,
It
as
has
part
to
of the
be.
budget recommendation, it could be done tonight.
Mr. Boland, do you remember how many days we were talking? Because I was thinking 5 and Judy was thinking 5 on both ends, wasn't you?
It was 5 on both ends, 10 total. 5 at the beginning, 5 at the end.
Usually.
What about the extra service schedules? Well, did we do anything with that with?
No, part of
coaches?
tonight's approval was supposed to be, you have the schedules in front of you along with this presentation. Part of the approval tonight is you're approving these schedules based on our conversation we had last Tuesday. Now, if decisions are made tonight to change salaries again, which again, I was not aware of until Friday morning when I was trying to compile all of this to get it to you for tonight's presentation. I thought we were standing with the decisions that were made last Tuesday. So those are the schedules you have before you that were to be approved tonight. And that includes extra service schedules.
What are the attendance clerks' days right now?
181.
So 191. Thank you.
So if we move on, the next slide is a summary of our projected revenues, and we're showing, this is, most of these charts, just to preface it, is, you used to receive a PDF document from Dr. Bob that had all the charts in it and explanations. I've recreated those charts that you are used to seeing in that document, and I've done it in a PowerPoint presentation versus the PDF document. But so this is a summary of what we actually had revenues in 16-17, what our working budget right now is, and then the tentative and the changes in that. So
How much, you mentioned with the pound sign at the bottom there that we're missing grant money, and there's grant money which is not accounted for. So is there anything that we can count on definitely getting that we just can't book yet? Or can you
we will
fill in some of
definitely-
that blank?
the only things that we know for sure that will be cut, that we get no funding whatsoever, if you'll flip to the next slide, please, is our professional development and instructional resource monies. Those have been cut 100% to every district. So, and then we have majority of our state grants have already been allocated. There are a few that have not, that we're still waiting on. Safe Schools is one of them, but we've been told that will actually go up. More funding got put into that. And then we have the vocational SEEK dollars, or is the other state grant that we haven't gotten notification of yet, which is typically about $70,000. So those are the only state ones that we don't have any notice of. Federal, the only thing we know at this point is Title III. So we have Title I, Title II, IDEA B, our special education. We foresee that those may be cut a little bit, but we don't know those numbers at this point on those grants. And I would not want to speculate what that percentage is at this point, because it is.
Before we leave revenues, one of the revenue items is omitted property tax. It was $104,000 last year, or I'm sorry, 2 years ago. The budget last year was $100,000, and now the budget's doubled to $200,000. What's the thinking behind
That was based
that?
on an average collection rate. So I took the historical average for the last 5 years on our system and did that budget.
So then, last year would have been unusually low at the $100,000. I mean, to have
Been
something
higher.
doubled is pretty significant.
That, I mean, I'd have to look at what current money is. That the last year actuals is the 16-17 year. I'd have to look at what we've currently collected. I don't have that documentation in front of me, but it was based on an average. So all of the ones that weren't property taxes or specific set amounts that we know for sure, I looked at historical average for 5 years and budgeted that. If there's a better way to do it, I will take your advice.
Where are you seeing the omitted property tax, Mr. Heisel?
I'm on the tentative. It's not on that presentation right there.
It's on the printout from
It's on
Munis.
the Munis
Okay.
printout. I think for right now, we might just want to circle that to keep an eye on that, and perhaps go back and take a look at the 5-year history to make sure there wasn't an Excel issue that jumped up into it. But for right now, just make a note that the target is the 5-year average. Thank you.
So this slide, as I was discussing, it is right now what we know of our district allocations and grants at this moment. And again, those are subject to change. After I had put this together, we got our contract for our Striving Readers Grant, which is an additional $360,000 to the district for literacy and professional development in that area.
That's 1/2 of the grant, that's the first year.
Is there any additional expense that would go along with that $300,000?
Not at this point.
So
And Does that go then into one of the special revenues? Does that go
Yeah,
into
that's
general
Fund 2.
Okay.
All grants go into Fund 2 special revenue.
Okay.
So the next slide shows all funds, a comparison between our draft budget and our tentative budget. And again, we just discussed, so general fund, the next slide will summarize that in just a moment. Fund 2, we just discussed that that's all we know at this point. Draft budget, we never put anything in because we know no awards in January for the next fiscal year. Right now, all we are aware of is the 1.7. Capital and building funds change based on the SEEK allocation form, which you were also provided in this packet of information, and food service funds have not changed at all at this point. So the next slide summarizes general fund. Beginning balance, I do have a summary on the next slide, but basically we said in the draft budget we were going to budget 15 million. We have committed 6 million to the BG complex phase 3, and then with historic data of how multiple years now we have rolled over expenses at the end of the year, we're estimating about $1 million, so that comes out to a decrease of the 5 million, and just keeping it at even numbers, 10 million. SEEK, we know it's going up, that's your state revenue, that's already again included in your allocation. So right now those are the only revenue sources we know are changing from the draft to the tentative level, which we've previously discussed. Next slide again is the summary of the beginning balance. So as I said, 15, we've committed 6. We're estimating about $1 million that we're going to not spend in our current budget, leaving 10 million for beginning balance. And that has been shown in quarter reports since I've been here, started the quarterly reporting. The trend of our revenues is always around the 103, 104%. We always collect more than we budget because we conservatively budget. Expenses, we have always spent under 80% of what we have budgeted. So that's what essentially rolls into contingency, as you want to say. Expense considerations, we have to budget for debt service. That is paid out of our capital funds. We have to allocate money to our councils. And that's what is the Section 6 based on the per pupil funding. Section 7 is anything additional that the board might choose to budget, which at this time we don't. And those amounts will be adjusted at the second growth factor report.
So
yes,
the
ma'am.
90% funded,
So we did 4,000 per pupil, which is the 140, but we only fund that at 90%. The 140 is 100%. So you're
did we
funding
go
that.
back, did we go back and fund it at 100% last year?
Yes, we did later, but we didn't right off the bat. We
Not
did.
until we see what their enrollment,
Second.
their
Okay.
ADA, the second growth factor report is. So at that point, essentially, if they don't meet that number, we take money away from them. If they meet it, you give it to them. But that's why we do the 90%, so we hopefully don't have to take any
We
money
take money
away.
out of the 10% so that it doesn't reduce the
Right.
budgets.
And then again, salaries, when this was put together, it's based on step raises of what was already on the current salary schedules. We knew that the classified rate contribution was going to increase, but from our draft level, we've actually decreased that because we budgeted worst case scenario at the draft level. So we got to pull back from that, so that was a positive number back in our budget. And then the board approved raises that we did last Tuesday, the $10 minimum and the 2% overall for food service. That's what is in this budget. I'm sorry. And 3 SROs, I'm sorry, the 3 new positions are added.
But are those included
Yes, ma'am.
here?
So slide 10 is what you're on. This is a summary of our debt bond payments. You are also provided with the debt service schedule in your packet. So just to summarize, for next year we have 4.1 million in debt. We're expecting 4.4 in revenue, so that leaves uncommitted capital funds for a project 246,000. And then the next slide is a summary of personnel expenses. Again, actuals for last year, budget this year, tentative budget, and that change.
Ms. Ellis, assuming we have an increase in the number of retirees this year, how does that affect these numbers?
It makes them go down.
Okay.
So the more people you have retire with higher years of experience, you are not going to be hiring that level back.
Right.
So
How about expenses and paying out one-time payments and that kind of thing? Or benefits on the benefit side?
we have that, but we have to set aside a reserve, so that's already set aside in the budget as a reserve.
Okay.
For all that's possible could be done.
Right.
Yeah.
So in case that does happen, we always talk about,
Yeah.
In case
if it
ever
does
did
happen, and we don't think it's ever going to happen, this is the year it's going to happen,
So
so.
you're covered.
Yes. We
It was
set
about
up-
half of what it could have been this time.
Okay.
Is that reserve the accumulated sick leave?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Looks like that's $150,000, and last year we used $40,000.
And so the budget is 150 again. It gets reassessed during the audit based on our current staff in that level, which will actually go down because the number of people in that pool is, several of them have retired this year, so that number might be adjusted by the auditors for next year.
So while we're on this particular page, I took the details that came across this morning, and the FICA contribution is only going up $5,000 or 1% compared to last year's budget. Does that strike you in any particular way? It doesn't seem like it ought to be going up the same percentage as what the salaries are.
I didn't look at the individual like that. I plug in the salaries based on the staff that I have pulled out. And then in that org code, I take your classified, certified, because certified does not pay FICA, and do a calculation based on that, which there is. So, I mean,
Let me just make a note of that.
so there are multiple org codes for the different groupings within the district. As you can see from the detail, there are many combos.
It just sort of stood out because Medicare was going up 3%, but FICA was only going up 1%, so it seemed like they should have tracked together.
I'd have to go back and look at the data again to verify that.
The KTRS employer contribution compared to last year's budget and compared to what we paid the year before that. The year before that, we paid $600,000. The budget was $602 for this year, and it's gone down to $516,000. Does that sound right?
Yes, with staff, your years of experience of staff, the salaries are lower, so the percentage would be lower.
Okay, so the budget does reflect a rollover of swapping staff with more
Yes.
years for less years.
Yes, so this
Because there was the
current,
implication earlier that it did not.
this current budget, the salaries were pulled, we made decisions on last Tuesday. I pulled a salary list on Wednesday. So the previous list, I pull a list 3 times when I'm doing budget. I do one in December to create the January budget, and I pull it again February, March to kind of verify those numbers, which we've talked about. So I do my best case scenario without having to pull the list every time and create the salary tables, and because it is a process. So it is, I'm trying to give you the best information I can with the staff at that period of time. So I pulled a list, like I said, Wednesday. We've already had several of those retirees gone and hired in new people that will then roll over into the next year. And some we haven't. So some of the budgets, some of the people in the budget are still your June 30th people who haven't left us yet, maybe July, August, who have intended to retire, but they won't. So we are budgeting the higher salary for them, but there are multiple positions that have already retired or resigned at this point and had that
And we've
lower
already
pay
filled
people.
those.
Okay.
Yes.
So what we talked about a while ago, we're sort of part of the way through that transition
Yes.
process.
Yes, so you'll
Okay.
still see more at the end of the year with those people. That's why you see with what was committed Tuesday, 3 SROs were added to the budget. You added the 6,000 for the $10, but you still see that we only changed from about 142 to 138,000 available right now. When we get to the end of this is our excess funding, and that's part of the turnover of staff at this point.
It's going to be a lot of fun keeping track of that every week, isn't it?
It is, it's a joy. Absolutely. So if you'll move to the next slide, it's the difference in our general fund salaries from the draft to the tentative level. Again, part of what you've already heard is
Our nursing staff received an extra hour. They used to be 7-hour staff. They're now 8-hour staff. So that was not in the draft budget in January. That decision had not been made by the time I put the budget together. So that is now in the tentative budget. We added 3 SROs. We have step adjustments from where people have had partial contracts to full contracts, change in staff, and it equates to this difference between your draft and your tentative. Next slides are summary of our food service salaries from actuals, working, tentative, and then the next one, draft and tentative. Again, that includes what the board gave a directive of last Tuesday, the 2% overall raise in all of food service staff, and to have a minimum of the 10. And I sat down with Becky when we did this, and we decided she has subs. She keeps 5 subs pretty much permanently on staff because that's, I mean, she just has the need to, and those are 5 people who are willing to be called in every day. So we ended up just budgeting that amount as if they were full-time, even though they're subs. So that made her sub budget go up a little bit. We just wanted to make room for that. So that's why you're seeing an increase of about $100,000 on her salaries. Next slide is just a summary of how the benefits are. I've already addressed that one. So next one.
Back on the comparison to the draft and tentative.
Yes, ma'am.
On the contingency.
Which slide are you on?
This is, how do I tell? I don't see a number. Oh, 17 of 20.
We haven't made it to that page yet.
Okay, we haven't done draft versus tentative.
17 is the full summary list of expenses. Where
What's
you're
the
looking at
title?
contingencies.
Comparison projected expense draft versus tentative.
We have not made it to that. You're skipping ahead, Ms. Nix.
Okay, sorry.
So the benefits percentage is just, again, the summary of what we have to pay benefit-wise. I just wanted to throw that in there so you all know how that is calculated.
Oh, that was my confusion on draft versus tentative, sorry.
So at the draft level, like I said, we budgeted worst case scenario for our classified retirement rate because we had no idea in January what was going to be decided. And it went from the 28.05 down to 21.48. So that's where we got some money back in our budget for salaries. The next slide, the summary of general fund expenses. This is your actual versus what our working budget right now is and what we have for the tentative budget.
You ready for some detailed questions? They're going to be fun. Okay, let's look at where to go. Let's go back to page 16. All right, so they're in the 400s. Purchase property and services going down $355,000. So I had some questions about what makes that up. Building repairs last year was $479,000. I'm sorry, $646,000. The budget was $618,000. This year's budget is $429,000. Why is that going down $190,000?
I'm sorry, where are we at?
Building repairs and maintenance. It's not in the 35-page document.
I did not print the detailed one.
It's in the main. It's the I guess the budget level 2 details. Well, the only way you can come after this number is to take each one of the building repairs and maintenance and roll them all up together to try to compare this.
I would have to go look at the individual detail, which I did not print that report. I sat down with every department in December and we looked at their budgets and we decided based on their need for this coming year what they needed. And so that's how the draft budget was completed.
Okay.
And then at that point, the only thing that's changed are the few items that we have talked about in the last 2 meetings.
Okay. Under other rentals,
That part of that may have been capital outlay was added into that last year's budget, but we got some back in capital outlay.
Majority of that, I would say, is capital outlay because we did a maintenance request. And essentially, that puts money back in the budget to be spent again. So we're not going to re-budget that again next year.
other rentals has been zero and it's now $30,000. Do y'all happen to remember what that is?
That
It's for
is,
it's a central office
yes,
item.
that's anticipation of the Head Start grant, that we would be adding mobiles if we got that grant. So that's adding mobile rental that we don't currently have.
Okay. Sanitation cost, I thought I had a recollection that that was going up, but it looks like it's actually gone down $2,400.
Well,
My
you're looking
recollection
at
wrong?
working budget, I'm looking at draft budget versus tentative budget when I told you that amount.
Okay, so it's relatively flat.
I didn't do a comparison of the changes on the working and the tentative. My brain's already moved on to the draft budget. We approved that in January. At that point, I felt like any details should have been addressed in the draft budget, and the only thing that has changed since the draft budget are the items that we discussed in the prior two meetings.
Moving on to the 600s, that's gone to the supplies, surprisingly, it's gone down $265,000. That is compared to the working budget, so if I'm following you correctly, you're saying, Scott, what you probably ought to do is jump off of working budget and compare the tentative budget to maybe what the actual expense was for the prior year, and that might put you closer in line to that then.
I think we need to move on to the next slide and compare the draft and the tentative instead of this slide. This is a summary, so you can see how it's progressed,
Okay. But my concern is that in going through the details, it seemed like the current budget that's in front of us is leaning in a lot of spots based upon past history.
Again, I sat down with every single department, every single principal, and this is how they chose to have their budgets, and once it's all added together, that is how it has come together. But
Do you know on the tech software what they have in mind? That's a pretty significant jump.
yes, at the draft budget level, we discussed that we increased that to accommodate, I have to go find my draft budget. It was 3 different things. It was for STLPs, the Microsoft EES software, is that, did I say that right? Microsoft's programming, whatever that, there's some letters on the end of that. It's currently being paid out of CATS. Mr. Nager asked for it to be paid out of general fund. We built that into the tentative budget along with the student messenger, or yes, thank you. All of that is currently out of the CATS budget. So at the draft level, when I sat down with him to talk about his technology budget, that was one of his requests, again, built into the draft budget.
The version you sent me this morning, what do you call that level of detail? Is it like level 2?
Level 3 just means tentative budget. Level 2 is draft budget, so it's just the detail of level 3, which is the tentative budget.
Okay. I guess that document, did we have that back in January when we did the other?
You should have, I'm pretty positive I sent you the level 2 detail budget.
I guess when we come around to this next year, so I'm not looking at it for, the morning of the meeting, I know, there's a lot of pieces that are going into that. I'd love to get the detail ahead of time, so I don't have to waste your time right now on it.
I would love to get the budget done sooner than I did this year too.
Okay. I think then I won't drag you down anymore in the details on that.
If we move to the draft versus tentative, I can give you detail of exactly what those changes are. Again, we've already talked about salaries. The difference in your 0300s was the security service, your 0400 was your Rumpke. The 0600s was Section 6 money. We have a new KISTA bond, so our bond debt went up because that's paid out of general fund. And then initially in the draft budget at the January level, we had CATS money that we had not paid yet, so it was sitting in escrow, so I built in a transfer budget for that. But in March, I just went ahead and moved all that to Fund 2 to set up the new grant, so it is not built into this budget. because we have paid every CATS thing except for what was approved on Tuesday at this point. So those are the changes.
So which slide are we?
That is 17 and 6.
Okay, there's my question. Just waiting for
Yes,
17.
so-
Okay, on the contingency difference.
Yes.
Does that include the allocations that the board has made from contingency during the various time period up to now?
Yes.
Okay.
So the way the budget works, just to kind of clarify, is we take our reoccurring revenues and without a beginning balance and budget the expenses so that we're staying within, and we'll see that on a slide here in a minute. Here's what we're going to bring in for the year, and we only really want to spend that money out for the year. And anything different is that contingency number with whatever the beginning balance added in is. So that's your rollover money, and essentially why you say your contingency is rollover, but your beginning balance is the rolled over amount that is not spent. Does that make sense? Or did I just confuse that more?
Repeat. The rollover amount, the
So
contingency is a
rollover-
rollover amount.
Essentially, contingency is your rollover amount, but it's doing the difference of your budget that you budgeted for reoccurring money. So you have your beginning balance and all the money you're going to bring in for the year. That's your total budget. Okay? So you get to the expense side, you budget all of your expenses, and then whatever's left over is your contingency. And then when you get to say if you're deficient or excess, which is another slide we have, we only look at reoccurring dollars that year. You take out your beginning balance and you take out contingency, and you only look at the middle money. So if you'll notice on this slide, contingency is $10,138,440, okay? If you move over to the next slide, this is just your reoccurring dollars for this coming fiscal year, 2018-19, and it's showing that you're gonna have an excess of $138,440. So we have a beginning balance of $10 million.
Which is the amount of the contingency.
Plus our excess money that's not been spent. Does that make sense? Okay. So again, this is a historical comparison of what previous tentative budgets have been to what we currently are budgeting for this next year. And as you see, this budget we're sitting in now, when we did the tentative level, we had in excess of $366,000. So we're still, that's considered structurally balanced when you have money left over instead of being deficient like we were at the draft level in January. And then this is just the next one is just a summary between your draft and your tentative. We were deficient at the draft level. We now have excess funds. And again, the biggest part of that increase is your salaries, the turnover of your staff. And you will see more money added to that at the end of June because we're going to have another turnover of staff when we have more people retire. Are there any questions?
Any questions? All right. Thank you, Ms. Ellis. It's quite a large task. And I think what I was trying to describe earlier is the difference between with account detail and without. That's the difference between 35 pages and 104 pages. All righty, so we're on item number 4, consider adoption of the 2018-2019 tentative budget. Is there further discussion on this item amongst the board?
What'd you say?
Is there any further discussion?
I'd like to see my attendance clerk, our attendance clerk, the days changed. since we talked about that 2 meetings ago.
Should we zero in on that document that would address that then? Because you put the schedules within the
Yes, so
packet.
attendance clerks are paid on the CL01 table. And we have 6 of them legal on that table.
How many? I'm sorry.
6. I don't have their official years of experience to know where they sit without going and looking them up in payroll.
So I believe this is going to be under item 3C, salary schedules, which is an 18-page document. Does that sound right?
Yes, sir.
CL what?
O1s are our attendance clerks. And they are 181 days. And I think they are 7 hours?
What page did you say, Scott?
7.5.
This is on document 3C.
I'm there, but what
Okay,
page?
on page 3 of that document, classified hourly schedule.
I just want to throw out while we're talking extended days. We have one of the ladies who gives time and works hard. She's our school secretary / bookkeeper. They need extra days as well. I mean, you start getting in, not that attendance clerks don't need days. They're getting ready to have a task added to them. But again, I just want you to be aware there's multiple positions who could use additional days as well for consideration.
Could anyone use fewer days?
Don't think so, because we always have to do more with less.
Realistically, we're sitting in May 20th. I know from your standpoint, you would really, really love to have any changes if they're going to be made before we cross over into July 1st.
Yes, sir.
But that gives us, give or take, 6 weeks to continue to massage this. So is it possible for us for the board to pass a budget today, it gets submitted to the state, and then at a subsequent meeting between now and June 30th, through one way, shape, or form, we go back and revisit these schedules and make perhaps an individual change or something like that? Is that workable and compliant with KRS laws and regulations?
Well, I think one of the ways that you could address it would be to get some value from Ms. Ellis tonight, include that in that line item today in your tentative budget.
Because in the schedule that's in the packet, it doesn't even refer to the number of days.
I do not have number of days on the hourly schedule because based on what school they're at, based on the need there,
Elementary, middle, high school.
it can change. So the hourly schedule, we don't have days because it's an hourly rate. That rate's not going to change no matter how many days or how many hours they work. The other schedules, I did add days and hours so that because that annual salary is based specifically on an amount. But the hourly rate is the hourly rate regardless of what you work.
So what is,
So-
go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go if you were.
No, I think you're the same question, but go ahead.
So, for classified hourly people, does their work agreement?
Yes, the
not
work agreement states what they work.
Because
How many
it
days
states their
and
number
hours?
of days.
And hours.
Days and hours are
Okay.
stated on their work agreement.
Okay.
It's just not on the salary schedule because that is way too many lines to have to.
So what are your
You think
days?
it's complicated now.
Mine,
Yes.
200.
Yeah, I think for us, when we look at so many different, so many different categories and titles within those categories, but they have been consolidated, thank you, which helps
I
tremendously.
would still like to consolidate this more if
But
possible.
still, there
but it
are
is
there are
difficult.
just so many
Yes.
titles, and you wonder, okay, what's the difference between a payroll clerk and an accounts payable clerk? What's the difference between an employee benefits specialist and a bookkeeper? Just, what's the? And I know the duties. I'm assuming, and we have the job descriptions for those. But even when you read those, it's okay. What do these folks really? What makes it different that would cause a difference in the salary schedule amount between attendance clerk in CL01 and accounts payable clerk in CL11? But
Don't have any-
And I think that's a valid question. That's why I think I think we need to study this in detail. So I believe the juncture where we're sitting right now is we have document in front of us that lists pay rates, does not specify the number of days. Do we want to go down a path to insert within that on a parenthetical note exactly what the days are for a particular classification, CL1, and then go into that at an even lower level on a school-by-school basis? Or should we save that particular detail change for a subsequent meeting that may or may not occur depending on board desires between now and June 30th? It seems like that's the juncture where we're at.
It would seem like if you were actually going to make any formal change to your job description, that you'd have to do that in some separate agenda item.
But I guess from a legal standpoint, there's no reason if we wanted to, we couldn't pass this right here and then come back in, let's say, 3 weeks and do a comprehensive review if we wanted to make tweaks here and there. No reason we couldn't do that.
Correct.
Okay.
Unless you were, if we approve this tonight, you couldn't come back 3 weeks from now and lower a salary, could you? No.
Well, I think you could.
Could if that was the board's directive.
You could lower or raise them.
As long as it's before July 1?
Not for this year, you can't.
Not
We-
for this
well,
year.
back- we let ship
Not
sail.
for where we're sitting right now, for next year.
Oh, okay.
For July 1.
The funny feeling though, a lower salary is probably not going to go over
We
very
have to
well.
have some sort of approved salary schedule starting July 1 for next fiscal year though.
I was just trying to make the point that we still have opportunity to down June 30th to make additional tweaks to the pay schedule if that's the desire of the board. It doesn't necessarily have to be bound to our budget discussion right now. This is something we want to feel in a large sense happy with. We submitted to the state, we've done that part. We want to make adjustments so we could do that knowing that it's going to be coming out of our $10 million contingency.
Yes. As you all well know, school accounting is quite backwards. You do a process and then you have another process to change this. I mean, that's just school accounting. We're not the only district that deals with that. It's a state thing, but we have mandated timeframes of documents that have to be turned into the state, and the tentative budget has to be turned in by May 30th. So, and we have to have approved salary schedules by June 30th to start July 1 with. You can amend those up into a certain period before your working budget and retro that to July 1, and then your working budget gets turned in on September 30th. So there's, as you proceed, and again, we don't get a property rate, and we don't get our appraised property value assessment. Thank you. I couldn't come up with that word. Our assessments and what our possible tax rates could be until we submit this year's AFR by July 25th. And then 10 days after that, we will get those rates to then have a hearing in August. So, there's a time frame, and it all seems a little bit backwards, but that's just the time frame of how school accounting works.
So, circling back around to it, we want to try to make a change on the salary schedule that goes along with the budget, or do we want to simply have a motion to approve the budget the way it has been presented to us by Mrs. Ellis, and then take another bite at that salary schedule apple at a later time?
I move to adopt the 2018-2019 tentative budget with a 4% across-the-board classified raise and a 2% across-the-board certified raise.
Okay, so we have a motion by Mr. Peridot to approve the budget that is presented in the in our packets, in addition to make a 4% classified, across-the-board classified rate and a 2% certified across-the-board rate. Do I understand that correctly, Mr. Peridot?
10 days.
You can add that.
Okay. And what would this cost?
Just one moment.
So what was it, 4%?
4% classified.
and
2%
2% certified.
And that's open to any amendments that want to come with that. If you want to wait and address the other amount of days, I would rather wait for a superintendent recommendation on those, but I'm good with whatever he wants to do.
I got about 776,000 between both, because I'm looking at what was talked about last Tuesday. So again, this is a rough figure based on numbers. It will be a little bit lower, but we had a 2% classified. So if you do that times 2, it's 365,000 roughly for classified, 411,000 for certified, based on the numbers that.
Okay, he said a 4% for classified.
Yes, so
I thought you said 2% for
last
everybody.
week, I presented a 2% for classified would cost, a 1% for certified would cost, so I just doubled that.
Okay.
And all that's based on the personnel we have right
Yes.
now. So
Yes.
the certified,
So it could change.
you've
It's
got,
gonna go
definitely,
down.
you've got a lot of those people changing. So
Yes,
it's
sir.
not going to be exactly double.
And
And this
even on
is-
your classified side, because you have
Exactly.
people retiring there
Right.
too at higher years.
So what was the total?
And these
About
calculations,
$775,000 total.
and these calculations include benefits.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I forget the number, we're about 140,000 in the positive right now. So if we did that, then our budget would go in the reds about $636,000.
Yes, sir.
All right, is there a second to Mr. Peridot's motion?
If I can have the 10 days and amend
You're
it.
going to make an amendment.
What specifically is your amendment?
10 extra, add the 10 days, the 5 days before and 5 days after for the attendance clerks.
So all attendance clerks, we would add 10 days to, or we would try to achieve a minimum number of days for attendance clerks? Because I think you said there was
You
two.
only have
Six.
6 attendance
It's not gonna
clerks.
be a whole lot of money.
Well, I just want to make sure
I
I
know.
understand, because there was a discussion about some might be at 180 days, some might be 200 days.
All attendance clerks are 181s.
Okay, so that would
191.
change the number of days of attendance clerk to 191 days. Is
And that cost
that what
would
you're
be-
saying? And is that your intention, Ms.
I
Ritchie?
don't know that cost off the top of my head.
Yes.
In this picture, it's minimal.
What was that job class, CL?
CL01.
CL01. All right, so that, Ms. Ritchie's amendment to that is to take CL01 from 181 days to 191 days. Mr. Peridot, you accept that amendment?
Well, it's an amendment, it's there, so.
Is that a yes?
I mean, she could amend anything she wants to right there. I mean, that's fine.
What you
Okay,
do-
But
Do
do
you
you accept
support-
that with your motion?
Well,
Well, my motion is there. She made an amendment that added to the motion right there. I
but you
mean,
vote on
would-
the amendment first.
You would vote on the amendment and then you would
then-
vote on the other.
Yes.
That's
All right.
right there.
Yes.
Well, we'll take that in order then. So, in that particular order then, we have an amendment proposed by Ms. Ritchie to take CL01 from 181 days scheduled to 191 days. Is there any further discussion on that particular item?
Now, did she second my motion? Did you second my motion?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure.
That was the whole thing that started this.
I know what started it. We're about to finish.
Ms. Ellis, what's the bottom line again? I was doing some of my calculations here. Let's see if
On
your
the
numbers match. mine.
Overall,
Yeah, so what's on the table is 4 and 2, right?
yes, approximately 775,000.
All right.
Are we close?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion on the narrow topic of changing CL01 from 181 days to 191 days? Okay, all those in favor of that particular change say aye. All those opposed say nay. Nay.
Nay.
So do I count
Thank you, Dr. Kudak.
3 ayes and 2 nays? Is that the correct count? Okay, so the 2 nays are Hicks and Heisel. All right, so that amendment passes. So if I understand it correctly, now what we have on the floor in front of us is a motion to accept the budget as has been presented, and in addition, to make an adjustment to the classified pay schedules to increase them across the board by 4% and a 2% across the board increase to the certified pay schedules. And that motion was made by Mr. Peridot and it was seconded by Ms. Ritchie. Do I understand that correctly? And we have an approximate cost of $776,000 that's been estimated by Mrs. Ellis,
Plus the amendment.
plus the amendment cost.
You're talking about the group there that we raised the salary to $10 an hour. That's the group that we're adding today. They were one.
CLO ones, we had to raise their 0 starting to 10 to get them to 10. So, I mean,
Let me see real quick if I can.
6 people shouldn't cost a whole lot of money. I mean, it should be under 20,000 first.
Way.
Way
All right.
over. That's overestimating.
So are we at
If they are at the-
800,000
if they are
now?
at the-
We're at 95,000
With
now.
benefits?
Yes. Approximately, but
I
that
think
will
it's-
go down based on turnover of
I
staff.
think
I
that
know it
would
will be
cost
less than that.
approximately $5,000. That's,
Yes, I
that's
would
your
be
smell
very
test.
generous to make sure that we.
Okay.
That
can
includes
go over.
benefits.
Oh, I'm sorry. No. So we'll add benefits to that, $5,000 plus benefits.
And I'd like to add, just worst case scenario, we don't raise taxes, we can sustain this out of our current contingency for 8 years to get down to the 2%.
Is that the $10 million contingency?
No, that is taking, we're gonna look at a report next month that we're down to like 6 million in contingency based on that 6 million. But again, that's rolling over. I mean, I'm just basing it on $6 million. If that's what we say our contingency is, that can be sustained for 8 years. This
And then
proposal
what?
have to raise taxes.
Okay. So there was a clarification that that CLO 1 change is going to cost somewhere estimated between $5,000 and $6,500, give or take.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we have the motion on the floor. Y'all want to have further discussion on the motion?
What were the other categories that you thought needed extended days?
Our school secretaries / bookkeepers, which they're called school secretaries on our schedule. Those would be the main ones. And there's several different salaries tables for them.
So what are you saying school secretaries need to be raised to?
That's what I'm asking.
It depends on the location they're on. They all work different days.
They have a different number of days now.
Elementary, middle, and high.
Elementary, middle, high, intermediate, junior high.
Right, I saw that Secretary 1, 2, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so within the elementary schools, do all elementary secretaries currently get the same number of days?
I don't know. All the elementaries do, yes, ma'am. I'd have to
Okay.
go look specifically.
But
what
that
those days
number
are.
of days may be different than the number of days for the secretaries at the intermediate and the junior high and the high school. But within each level, within that school configuration, all secretaries at the high school get the same number of days?
No, ma'am.
But all secretaries at the elementary do get the same number of days?
I'd have to go verify that. I don't have the individual people in front of me right now. I'm just saying there's other pockets of people that we have to look at every individual person, and then they all work different hours as well. And again, it's based on the need of the school. Classified staff is very hard.
Right, which when we pull out those individual
So I'm saying I
titles.
would like to see at a future
That's
meeting
why
a superintendent recommendation.
Yes.
on it.
And
We
that's,
can do that.
that's why I voted no, not because I don't
Right.
believe that this particular classification needs the days, but as you pointed out, other titles do as well. I'm just not sure this is the best way to go without some different analysis.
And my viewpoint is to do an analysis of this, spend some time, compare, see how we compare to how other districts are doing, so then we have data, we can make decisions. And I'm asserting that it doesn't have to, we can de-link the budget process to the salary adjustment process. Because if this 2%, 4% motion that was made passes, are you going to then amend the budget before we send it to the state?
I can, but we will not bring the budget back for additional approval, but this is the approval, so I can amend it.
So you
It'll
will,
take me
you will
the
amend it and
next-
send it to
The rest of the week to do that, but yes, I will.
Okay. And if we, well, whatever. If, let's say we address this at a subsequent meeting 2 weeks from now, you can go ahead and send the budget on the way it is, then we can then come back and take a look on a comprehensive basis at salary levels.
It is just my request from the finance side to please have a table ready to go July 1. Trying to retro anybody's pay or start in the middle of the year, change pay over. It's a very tedious process in reporting issues, all of that. So just asking you to please have July 1 our table for the year.
And I will be voting, when we get to it, against this motion, because I think we should de-link these two things at this point in time.
Call
I think
for a vote then.
We should go ahead and pass this, the budget, and then we can
you call for a
take a
vote?
look at the salaries separately from that.
Gordy called for a
Call for a
vote.
vote.
Okay, so there's a motion on the board to end discussion. So all in favor of, we're right now voting whether we should end discussion or not. We're not voting on the motion, we're voting to
Once you
end.
call
We
for a
call for a
vote.
vote.
I can go out and get my Robert's rules and order book out of the car. But right now, the way I'm handling it, we're going to take a vote on whether we should end discussion or not. Do you disagree with that, Mrs. Hicks?
Yes, that's correct.
What I'm saying is correct? All right. We're taking a vote right now whether we should end discussion on this motion. All in favor of ending discussion on this motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
No. Motion carries 4-1. Next.
Motion carries 4-1. The dissension is Dr. Kudak. All righty.
Well, actually, I had something else to say, but I do want to get out of here before midnight tonight, so let's move on.
All righty. So,
Got a motion on the table. It's been seconded. Let's
Discussion's
reread the
in.
motion and see where we're at.
would you like to reread the motion, Ms. Nance?
Well, the motion was made by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Ms. Ritchie after she made her amendment for 4% across the board to classified and a 2% to certified, with an approximate amount of $775,000, and plus the amendment cost of approximately $5,000 to $6,500.
And budget.
Yes.
And including current budget as well.
As is presented in the packet. Okay, all right. All those in favor, and let's get clarification on it since we're dealing with a significant amount of money. Let's do it by a showing of hands. Is that okay with everybody? All those in favor of this motion, raise their hand. All right, so we have 4 in favor of the motion. And those opposed? That's my hand, so we have 4 in favor, and the only person that's opposed is myself. So that motion passes on a 4-1 basis.
Mr. Chair, I request a point of privilege.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Looking at numbers here, I had to do some quick calculations. I think we can afford it without, by casting that vote, I committed myself to a tax increase. I'm going to put myself on the record as saying that. I think we can get by with a 2% tax increase. I don't know about the 3 to the 4%, but was able to do some quick numbers. But I just want to caution this board, and I don't like a lot of the things I heard tonight about spending contingency and one-time dollars to meet recurring expenses. This district got in some serious trouble years ago with that practice. Other boards across the state have gotten in serious trouble with that practice. It's bad bookkeeping, it's bad accounting, and it will get us into trouble. So I would really not want to hear that mentioned again. Just strikes it.
Any other
Good for
comments?
6 years.
All righty. So, the next item on the agenda is consider discussion and approval to contract for pay comparison study. This is my item. I put it in front of the board. There's nothing that goes along with it in the packet. My position was that we should programmatically do each item.
May I make a comment?
Please do.
I'm sorry. But to me, it's disappointing when people just sit until there's a salary vote and then they exit. There's
Yeah.
still additional business to do.
They have to teach school tomorrow.
Well,
No, they
yeah, we have to go to work tomorrow too.
We'll be up at 5 tomorrow.
Yes.
But I,
We'll be,
Let's move
we'll be at
along.
work in the morning. So it
I
is my
appreciate you being
opinion.
here. I appreciate you being here.
I, of course, appreciate you here also.
Yeah, we
It's my
appreciate people
opinion
being here.
that
There's
this is
other
a very
business, too.
complicated pay schedule, and I think we ought to have an analysis. We already have it out from KDE site on the certified standpoint, but we don't really have this on the certified, I'm sorry, on the classified standpoint to know where we stand in comparison to other districts and where we need to make further adjustments beyond the 4% that was made here a few minutes ago. I think it would behoove us to have data in hand so we know, y'all just made a 4% change, that's fine. What other changes might we need to make out there as we look towards the future? I think the way to do that is to contract for a study. And at this point in time, I don't have anyone in mind. I wanted to float a concept in front of you all to see whether you think we should investigate this. And it could be maybe somebody here in the district. I'm just throwing it up for example, somebody that's retired that could take the time to do this and try to put an apples and apples comparison in there of what we might call a position in our district, which what they might call Madison County. So then at the end of the day, we can have a comprehensive picture of how we really stand to see whether further adjustments may or may not be required among everything that's not rank 1, 2, or 3, because those numbers are already out there. And I think that would include the number of extended days, it would include index. It's a very complex calculation that I think is oversimplification just by doing it across the board. And we could have perhaps somebody locally do that, or we could maybe go outside and contract with a firm to do this. Naturally, that would escalate the price of it. But I think it would be money well served to consider something like this. So we have data in hand, so we can make logical decisions. You know, considering the money that we're talking about, you know, we just, you know, we've got $30 million in payroll, and if we spent $10,000 or $20,000 to do a study, so we have real data in hand, and we know where we should go to make sure we're competitive on each one of the, I don't know, 100 different job classes that there might be out there, I think it would be money well spent.
I'm on the opposite side. I disagree. I think many of our classified are competing for jobs here in town. They're not competing against other districts for that. And I really believe that those type of things should be in the hands of the superintendent to look out after his people and to bring recommendations to us. And I just think if we just find out what a school clerk makes here and what a school clerk makes in Harrison County, you know, our people are not going to leave Clark County to drive to Harrison County for that. They may go to Walmart, as I said before. And I just don't think it would be good money spent to do that when the superintendent can speak for the people that we have.
And I'm not sure if that study would preclude a comparison within the county also to city and county pay rates and pay rates of private industry.
I would say that data's out there. I don't see the point in paying the consultant to come in and help us with that, so. You know, you're not dealing with private industry here. In the school district, everything's public record, so you know where we stand.
I had to do an open records request to find out what Madison County was paying, because it's not out there.
But it's available.
True.
well, some of what we have is 2016-17 on one of the schedules. I'm a data person. I like to look at data, and I like to have the comparisons.
$20,000 worth.
Well, what percent of that is that a 30 million?
Touche.
Yeah.
I guess in all fairness, the classified part of the picture is $8 million, and the extended days and rank, that's probably somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million.
So what are you wanting to do? I mean, like, it says consider discussion and approval for contract, but you don't have nobody for a contract.
Well, I think we would decide, do we want to put an ad in the paper? Or is this something that could be done just on getting 3 comparative prices, or what? But you all may be against the idea, so that's why it's out there, so we can banter it around.
I just don't see what we gain from it. I really don't. I just don't. I don't see where it's going to make a difference for anybody. I really don't. And I think that can be best served just keeping people in the district taking care of their people.
The other thing is, I think if you had something more concrete that would say, okay, if we're going to issue an RFP, we're going to put an ad in the paper, and here's exactly what we're looking for, that would be more helpful.
I think that's kind of what that was where I was going.
This is kind of nebulous, so.
It's too open-ended.
Well, if everybody's against it, against the concept, because it's a brand new
But
concept.
what questions are you going to ask, and what are we going to get for our money if we do this? So that's why I don't.
Mr. Peridot has expressed his opinion that we don't even need to go to that level. So I think if there's three people thinking the whole concept's a bad idea, we don't even need to come, I don't even need to come back with any more fine tuning with a more concrete proposal at a subsequent meeting. It would be a waste of time.
I just worry about, again, if we get this and it says that somebody in another district's making $3 an hour more than what our people are we going to raise our pay? Or if they come out and find out that they're making the same as they do in this district, we're just going to look at our people and say, we told you so. I mean, I don't understand where we're going to get a lot of benefit from the survey. I don't know.
I'd like to have a roadmap, because it could be in some of the classifications were in line, and others that were not in line. That's why I'm against across-the-board increases.
No, the across-the-board bother me for the same reasons that I have expressed numerous times here. But, the nature of salary schedules in school districts is such that it's difficult to, when you target one, to try to raise them up, or even when you target multiple categories to get those up, it looks like you're ignoring everyone else or you're not being fair. And maybe the percentage across the board is fair, but when I see 2% of a $50,000 salary being a lot more than the 4% of the $10 salary, that seems to expand those challenges and those differences in salaries. And that's not going to change. But then when you do target, all the hoopla we got last week about raising these to $10 and ignoring everyone else, well,
There's no win.
there's no win, but it's not a win-lose thing, but it's trying to do the right thing for the right reasons for everyone. And when we adjourned last week, we all knew we were going to be back to talk about salaries again, but that's not what all the attacks were about this week. Oh, you're just ignoring all the classified, and look how hard all the certified, and look how hard we work. Well, then we get here tonight, look at how hard the classified work, and we were ignoring them with what was presented. So, it's not that we're wanting to ignore anyone. It's just that when you have X number of dollars without going into contingency, and yes, I voted for this, but I am not in favor of using contingency for recurring expenses. That is a bad business practice, and it is a bad educational practice, in my opinion. But we will move forward with this, and I'm glad to see our folks rewarded. And if it requires using contingency for a portion of the time, we'll bite the bullet and do it.
I would say on this topic, if there's inequities or issues with the salary schedule, we perpetuate those inequities just by giving percentage raises.
Yes.
So
Yes,
if there is something that could come out of this where we can look and say, listen, there are some really inherent problems in here that need to be addressed on a one-time basis, I would be all for that. I think that would be a good idea. But, this is like relative value units in medicine. Okay, surgeons are overvalued versus medical doctors. Everybody agrees on that. But, that's the way the original scale was set up. Everything's indexed to the original scale, and it's still the same as it was 20 years ago.
And does that make it right?
No.
No, it's not. And that's why
So if
I vote for across the board. I think
Well, I think we need to do something now, something this evening, something tonight, which is why I supported that. But I think if what could come out of this item is some analysis of where the more severe inequities are and something the system could do to address those, I think that would be good. But I think we need some more specifics on this.
I like the concept of doing a pay comparison study.
So,
I like that concept.
so we can move along. Let me suggest that, I think we have 3 people that have shown an interest in this. Let me take this as a challenge to try to fine tune this a little bit more and come back at a subsequent meeting with a more precise proposal then. Is that
That's
fair
fine.
enough then? Okay. Do y'all want to have any more discussion on this topic then? All right. Well, I will take that as a.
If this next topic's gonna be a long one, I'd like to go to the bathroom real quick.
I don't think it will be a long one.
Well, I think you don't.
I don't think it will.
5 minutes or more?
I certainly hope not.
That's a real.
So, item number 6, discussion and review of current drafts of marketing brochure. I wasn't quite sure exactly how we should address this. We contracted with the consultant to work on a marketing brochure for us. They gave us what's in the packet as versions Clark Rack 1 and Clark Rack B. Again, let me emphasize that these are drafts. Nothing in this signifies that every item on here is a that everything is factually correct. This is a draft. There might be wording that should be changes. I did a 3rd version, which is referred to as Clark Rack 3, where I sort of changed the wording around a little bit. And what we wanted to find out, and Mr. Stump has been working with the consultant on this, is what direction do you all want to go? Do you want to, there's grammatical problems in this. Again, this is a draft. This is a draft. And don't let Mrs. Hicks hang me on this, because this is just a draft to try to get the ball rolling. And the question is, from your all standpoint, where do we go to from here? Do we have a subcommittee that works with the marketing consultant to parse the exact wording? Or do we tell the consultant to come up with another version and then we keep bantering it back at different meetings? Or what is the pleasure of the board on how we move forward on this? That's the purpose of this right here. So you can see some versions that are out there, drafts. You got the draft card, right? These are drafts. See, how do y'all want to move forward from here? To be able to get towards a final product.
Well, not just spell check. The grammar really needs some work, and just the inconsistency in presentation, in my opinion.
So we hired somebody to do this, and we've got grammatical errors, and we're going back and.
And my part of this, in terms of the information, we're presenting 2016 data. Okay, we know that that's the most recent published data. The community looking at this doesn't. I mean, I have people who have asked me, why would we still have a sign in our front yard that says we're a distinguished district in 2016?
It's supposed to be down already. I agree.
So the folks who are getting this are not going to know that that is the most recently published data. So what can we do differently about that?
I'd put 2016 real small letters. Personally, as an advertising person, that's what I would do.
So, my question.
Yeah, a little asterisk at the bottom.
That's the way they do it when you go to buy something.
My question is, how do y'all want to move forward on this? Because there's a lot of nuts and bolts questions that we still need to answer on this.
I think the general concept is fine.
Yeah.
But how do we move forward in terms of what words to parse, what commas to put in, what alignment, what pictures, etc.?
I'm worried about, are we doing the job of the people we hired? I mean, what do we,
But it's subjective though, because even on theirs, they had 2 different versions of 2 different pictures. So who do y'all want to put in charge of making the decision? Just want to leave it in the superintendent's hands and then he can delegate as he sees fit?
I'd say he knows the strengths and the weaknesses of the districts better than anybody else, right, Paul?
Hope so.
So have we paid these people to do this draft, or do we pay them based on whether we accept it or not?
We agreed, we had an agreement with them to do this.
Yes.
Okay.
We didn't say, I assumed, I would think that they assumed that we're going to accept it.
one of these.
There's one of these or some form of it.
They get paid for that. I just don't want
Do they not?
district people to have to do a great deal of work and then, I mean, we've defeated the purpose.
And that certainly is another option, so we could just simply go back and say, we could go back and say, we think y'all need to tidy this up some more. Come back and give us another version, but somebody has to decide what version they like.
Right.
And
They're
what tweaks they
tidying
like.
up. I mean, they think they did it right the first time. I believe that they believe they produced what we asked
One has the
for.
wrong logo on it.
Yeah.
I think they felt there was we have to go back and look at their email. I think they felt that this was the first draft to get an idea, are we in the right ballpark? And I think we could easily say,
no.
we don't like that, go back and work on it some more and not give them any direction.
But we
I
need to
wanna
give
know,
them some direction.
so we don't keep bannering back to different meetings and we don't get finished for 6 months. Who's going to be the quarterback on this, working with the consultant to determine what's right? And I'm more than happy to have this gentleman right here to do it, or then he could delegate from that point in time, and then we come back to a subsequent board meeting with, here's the draft we're proposing. What's the pleasure of the board on how we move forward from here on fine tuning this?
Well, I'm fine with, making Mr. Christie the contact person right there and express our disappointment so far with this and that we need, and then, I don't know if he wants to meet with his team and say, this is what they've done out here, what are we leaving out, what's not in here, what do we need to highlight more, and then a board member can be a part of that as well. And if you want to get somebody else from the public, I mean, I'm fine with that. I think we're on the right track. Let's just make sure when we get it out there, it's the right thing.
I'll be glad to be the contact person and then express, that there are some concerns grammatically, and if there are some things on here that you don't want, and I haven't looked at this third one, to be honest, to see what the change in it is.
I'll have you a fourth one in the morning.
No, there's just different things in there that you would want to put different. I'm just looking here at this bottom one on athletics, conference champions, Are you talking about middle school conference champions? Because high school, you don't really have a conference anymore. You got regional champs, you got these kind of stuff. You want to highlight that. And I don't know the same thing about, best student newspaper in Kentucky. Okay, well,
When?
we know that we're going back to UK right there, the smoke signals and
Colonel's
won
pretty good,
awards,
too.
but why wouldn't we put the award that they put in?
And there was no selection for best newspaper in Kentucky high schools this year. They're the reigning number one.
That's what I'm
There
saying.
wasn't competition.
They
this year.
were awarded,
Yeah.
or recognized as being the best. I mean, I think there's some things like that, just looking through there, that we can clean up. I mean, when you say best newspaper in Kentucky, I mean, is that an opinion? But, what is that? So I think there's some things in there that can be cleaned up and look through these things. I think the principals can look at it. I think your team can look at it, board member. I'm fine with.
If they send
We
me
already
a
got the
fourth
long
version
one
in the
yours.
morning.
Huh?
Or hit the long point on yours.
Well, yeah, if you keep going, I'm gonna need them all.
Okay.
If you'll send me the fourth version tomorrow, then I will.
Okay.
Will.
Are you all happy then with Mr.
Yes.
I will go
Christie
with
being the
principals,
quarterback
we'll
on
we'll
this?
go through these, we'll make the corrections we think needs to be updated and get it back to in front of you again before.
Just
Where it
make sure
goes
we
back
get
to
all
them.
the good buzzwords in there. I think we've got to have those in there.
And I think the challenge that we have is we've constrained ourselves to one front and back. There's a lot of words, and I think probably down the road, we'll probably want to break this into an overall one, and then one for the elementary, and one for intermediate, and one for junior high, one for high school. But I wanted to get one started, and then we can then go from there. So by trying to cram everything into 2 pages, it makes it unnecessarily potentially wordy. So you have your charge, sir. All righty, any further discussion on that item on the agenda? Well, when Ms. Ritchie gets back.
I can't wait for her. Let's adjourn.
All righty, I have a motion by Mr. Peridot to adjourn.
Second.
There is a second by Ms. Hicks. All those in favor say aye. Aye. That motion passes.
You're not going to go up in flames naked.
4-0. Ms. Ritchie absent due to Being out of the room.
Let's say out of the room rather than
Being
absent.
out of the room, I'm sorry, being out of the room, I apologize.